When I first read the book, No Country for Old Men, that was my introduction to Cormac McCarthy, and I've read as much of his work as possible ever since. I'm currently still reading Blood Meridian, and it's a phenomenal book. It's something I kind of treat myself to occasionally, because it's just one of those things I don't ever want it to end, because the poetry, the prose, the language is so beautiful, set against a story that is so violent. And so, as a fan of his work, when I'd heard that the movie was coming out and was to be made by the Coen brothers, I was very excited, because the Coen brothers are a pair of my favorite filmmakers. They make wonderful films, they tell great stories. And the first few times I saw this movie, I very much enjoyed it and was enthralled. But after a while, I began to compare the movie to the book and started to think about what was missing from the movie, what they'd left out. The problem is the things that they left out. And I think the poster really sums it up. And I know as a filmmaker you have to make certain choices. You can't tell the entire story in one go. And it's a little redundant to say, well, the book was better than the movie. And so just as a little frame of reference here, I'd like to read the first chapter, which is essentially the introduction to the entire story from the book, No Country for Old Men. I sent this one boy to the gas chamber at Huntsville. One and only one. My arrest and my testimony. I went up there and visited with him 2 or 3 times. 3 times. Last time was the day of his execution. I didn't have to go, but I did. I sure didn't want to. He'd killed a 14-year-old girl, and I can tell you right now, I never did have no great desire to visit with him, let alone go to his execution, but I'd done it. The papers said it was a crime of passion. He told me there wasn't no passion to it. He'd been dating this girl, young as she was. He was 19. And he told me that he'd been planning to kill somebody for about as long as he could remember. Said that if they turned him out, he'd do it again. Said he knew he was going to hell. Told it to me out of his own mouth. I don't know what to make of that. I surely don't. I thought I'd never seen a person like that, and it got me to wondering if maybe he was some new kind. I watched him, strap him into the seat, and shut the door. He might have looked a bit nervous about it, but that was about all. I really believe that he knew he was going to be in hell in 15 minutes. I believe that. And I've thought about that a lot. He was not hard to talk to, called me sheriff, but I didn't know what to say to him. What do you say to a man that by his own admission has no soul? Why would you say anything? I've thought about that a good deal, but he wasn't nothing compared to what was coming down the pike. They say the eyes are the windows to the soul. I don't know what them eyes was the windows to, and I guess I'd as soon not know. But there's another view of the world out there, and other eyes to see it, and that's where this is going. It has done brought me to a place in my life I would not have thought I'd come to. Somewhere out there is a true and living prophet of destruction, and I don't want to confront him. I know he's real. I've seen his work. I walked in front of those eyes once. I won't do it again. I won't push my chips forward and stand up and go out and meet him. It ain't just being older. I wish there was. I can't say that it's even what you're willing to do, because I always knew that you had to be willing to die to even do this job. That was always true. Not to sound glorious about it or nothing, but you do. If you ain't, they'll know it. They'll see it in a heartbeat. I think it's more what you're willing to become. And I think a man would have to put his soul at hazard. And I won't do that. I think now that maybe I never would. So the first time we really meet Anton Chigurh and find out what he is and what he's all about is the coin toss at the gas station. Well, it's the first time we really see an element that we haven't yet seen. Up until that point, all we see is a murderous, evil force which seems quite unstoppable. But I think the coin toss is the most important part of the story, because you have choices in life. You always have a choice. In this case, it's brought to heads or tails. But that's kind of redundant. Although you could say the heads is the thinking, the logical, the logos, following the right path, the good path. The man in the gas station, regardless of anything else, his passive take on life, or his passive approach to life, it all seems to have worked out all right for him, and he's okay with where he is. And at that point is the coin toss. He chooses heads. And the coin toss comes up heads. And the man wins and keeps his life. But I bet after that his life is entirely changed. Later on in the movie, you don't see that Carla Jean does make a choice. In the book, she also calls heads. The coin comes up tails. She loses. But it was her choices that brought her to this. Now, although it was Llewellyn's choices which brought them both to this, Llewellyn also had the chance to end the whole thing at one point, and he could have kept his wife out of it. So ultimately it was Llewellyn's choices which brought them both undone. However, in the book it goes further and explains that, well, she did keep holding out for that money. She was stuck with her man. That was her choice. She could have walked away at any time. It's a difficult one, because really it was Llewellyn's actions that brought it down upon them, but she did make the choice. In the book, she chose heads. This is the way I see that moment in the book, is that she went against her nature. Her nature should have been tails, to run, to flee, keep moving. As we see with the man at the beginning by the side of the road when Chigurh is driving the sheriff deputy's car, pulls him over. The second he gets out of the car, you know something's wrong. You know something's not right. You know that that man is not a sheriff's deputy. He's walking up with some odd contraption that, I mean, what do you think that is, a breathalyzer? It ain't no breathalyzer. And he shoots him right in the forehead, because he just stands there like a deer in the headlights, or a rabbit in the headlights. It's an interesting thing, but in life we all make our choices, and the actions which come from those choices, or the consequence of those choices, are ours. We can't really escape our own fault, our own fate, and that's the way evil works. Perhaps it is our own fault, and it is our own fault. It's what some would call original sin, perhaps. I don't know about all that. We definitely live in a dualistic reality, and the choices we make in life are heads or tails, logos, anti-logos. Logos, by the way, is a Greek word. The logos of life is the word theology. So if you study stones, it's geology. Geology is such a long study because rocks are the lowest of the vibrational frequency in this reality. The logos of rocks takes millions, billions of years. The logos of water, I don't know what that word is, waterology, hydrology, riparianology, I don't know what you'd say that is, but the nature of water is it simply flows where it flows, and it will always return to its mass. It starts out in a great pool in the ocean. It's lifted up into the heavens, and it rains just as it's doing now. And the water flows back into the earth and makes its way through this journey. It can form a river, and it can change the logos of rock. That's how powerful it is. You work your way up to the chain, to humanity. The logos of being a human. We're given free will. And so we get to make choices of which way we're going to go. There's that saying, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. This is what concerns me. I met a man in the forest yesterday. I seem to meet him every 7 years. I don't know if it was him or not, but he was encouraging me to embrace the 0 point again, pacifism. But I embraced pacifism once before and it ruined my life. The first 4 years of my life, all I saw was the Vietnam War on ABC News. When I was around 5, I swore I would never fight in a war. And all those Hollywood anti-war movies that are actually pro-war movies to get young men to go, yeah, I'm going to go and fucking kill some insert whatever there. The enemy. It's possibly true that the path to enlightenment is the 0 point. And perhaps that's the only thing that can end the war. But it just doesn't seem, I don't know, to sit back passively and let nature take its course. That the last video I did, or tried to do on this and completely fucked it up, I was walking through a park, and I think that is a beautiful example of the logos of humanity, or what it should be. It's where, well, in scripture, the Bible says that God gave dominion. God gave man dominion over the earth and the animals and all the creepy crawlies and all that stuff. And I think that is where our choices lie. The logos of humanity, or the anti-logos. The fight between logos and anti-logos is the fight between taming nature or just going into nature. I would liken anti-logos to just wandering through the woods and thinking, oh, how wonderful and how beautiful this is. And it is. It's very beautiful. I go into the forest all the time. I don't have to hear stuff like that, the passing cars and whatnot. But that's the price you pay. Safety and compliance, as the Catholic Church puts it. But I would liken it to walking through that forest and walking into a spider's web, and that moment of freaking out and then being attacked by a deadly spider. You just don't know what is there. It could be a bird-eating spider, it could be a tiny spider. Being in the forest, it's likely to be something very nasty. And if you're not aware of where you're walking and what you're doing and the choices you're making in life, you're going to walk into some spiders' webs. Personally, I'm very grateful for spiders and their webs because I use them as an early warning system. If I'm about to walk into a web, I think twice. And maybe I backtrack. Or I clear the web and continue. And that is the nature of logos. But if you walk into that web or you go further into that, you're going to run into more spiders and more snakes and inherently the things that will ultimately lead you into hell. Jordan Peterson does a great video about this because he's so theatrical. He really embraces the need to embody logos and really take on the burden of living and life, and it's a very good video. I can't remember which it is. Something, the Resurrection of Logos. I think it's from the Resurrection of Logos. But ultimately, if you really want to get into logos and understand history and the history of logos and where bad choices can make you and take you, you need to look up a guy called Dr. E. Michael Jones.